One of the most important metrics of financial planning is to save for an emergency. And we are living in an emergency with the COVID 19 pandemic around us. I wish I made this video probably a year ago. I wish I saved up for an emergency like this some time ago. It's never too late, but it's important to know that while having investments, while saving for your tax planning, everything is important. It's also important to have a liquid resource of funds that you can fall back onto in the case of an emergency. And that is what we'll be talking about today. My name is Surya. Welcome to WalletWise. And this video will be about the importance of an emergency fund, which is nothing but a liquid source of funds, which are either in the form of a savings deposit, or it could be a fixed deposit or a recurring deposit, which has no lien, which has nothing that constrains you. If you want to withdraw the funds, you should have them in the next 24 to 48 hours at max. That is what I would call a liquid fund or an emergency fund. What if tomorrow there was a contingency and something happened to me? What happens to my dependents, my spouse, my mother, or anyone else at work who's dependent on me? For a business, it's important to have funds, liquid funds that are available in case there is a shortfall of revenue, your clients don't pay up on time. Of course, for businesses, it's a lot easier because you can always borrow a working capital loan and repay it as soon as you receive funds from your clientele. But today is a scenario where your client paying up might not be always possible because they might not be able to pay up. And hence comes the importance of an emergency fund. What I define as a good fund is like, if you have, for example, 1 lakh expenditure every month, you should be having at least 3x of that. That is about 3 lakh rupees of funds available, ideally not in your own bank account, because if I am the breadwinner and I have it in my bank account to a hospital due to COVID, then how do my people reach for those funds? It's kind of difficult. You should also remember that while health insurance would cover most of COVID and all health concerns, today hospitals are not taking people with health insurance. Rather, they're saying that we will not offer you cashless facility, admit yourself, finish your hospitalization, and when you get relieved, you would be given a list of the expenses incurred on your behalf, and you can submit that to your insurance company and claim it back. Now, at this juncture, it is important to have cash because this float of 1 or 2 months might be very difficult. So what constitutes an emergency fund? If you're living in a rented house, rent would be right at the top. And then along with that, your EMIs. If you're paying an EMI, that should also be there. If you're living in a joint family or you have an ancestral property or you're a loan-free property, great, that's awesome. Then you don't need to worry so much about the rent as a component, but otherwise that would be top priority. And then what else? Utilities. Now see, even in contingencies, let's say I lose my job, there's something wrong at my business, I still need to pay an electricity bill, I still need to pay my mobile bill, I still need to pay an internet bill. So 3 months of internet, mobile, DTH for if people are there at home who watch DTH. Well, you can cut down on Netflix at a time of a contingency, but yes, it's important to cater for these expenses. What else do you need? Groceries? Can you live without groceries? Absolutely not. Yeah, sure. What will happen is instead of buying avocado, you will probably end up buying something else, some other vegetable, but you still need to cater for providing grain, basic vegetables, dairy, meat. Another important component of your emergency fund would be salaries. Now, there are people who are dependent on you, like it could be a maid, could be a driver, could be other people who work for you. Now, the first thing in an emergency, your impulse should not be to fire them, but to find employment or to find your income so that they can be also compensated. Yeah, sure. If they can find their own jobs, if you lay them off, that's not a big deal in today's world, but doesn't mean that the first objective should be that. So keeping funds available for them, these are all dependents on you. Next, what comes in? You might have fixed savings, fixed investments that you have to pay. For example, your children's education, it's an investment, it's an expenditure from many perspectives, but it's also an investment because you are paying for your child's future. So if you have your child's education fees coming up in the next 3 months or 6 months, I would cater for at least that cost. If you have recurring medical expenses, that goes in there too. So cumulatively, if a household is, it could be 2 people, 4 people, 6 people, 10 people. So this dynamic you have to figure out. For me, it's only 3 of us, me, my wife and my mother. The 3 of us live. and I need to save at least say a lakh of rupees for them to be comfortable. So 3 into 1 lakh, 3 lakhs. That's a fund I should not be touching, should not be there under my control. Why should it be not under my control? Because if something happens to me, then who can access those funds? So a joint account would be a great idea to have an emergency fund. How do you fund this emergency fund? This is a question that a lot of us might wonder, because it could be like, where do you get that funds to even create that fund? Now, if you're wondering about that, this, like Rome was not built in a day. This fund will not be built overnight. Just like your investment portfolio is not built overnight. No major company is built overnight. Even the small fund, it could be worth 30,000 rupees or 50,000 rupees or 5 lakh rupees. I don't know. I don't know how deep your pocket is and how much of expense you have on a monthly basis. But see that you have 3 months of that fund available. And how do you build for that? Let's take one example of a middle class household that is currently spending about 30,000 rupees per month. So 30,000 into 3 would be 90,000 rupees. So if you are considering that you need to have a fund for an emergency, you need to have 90,000 rupees without any disturbance available in a liquid form. How do you build that? You cannot build that overnight. So what you would need to do is that out of your monthly income, if you are able to contribute 10%, 5% to a side, over a period of 1 year, maybe even 1.5 years, you will have this fund available. Another way to build this fund instantly, for example, in the current scenario, what I would advise people to do is, if you have any profitable investments, for example, you might have some equity, you might have mutual funds, you might have gold. Gold has shot up significantly. I'm not talking of ornamental gold, but if you have any gold in coin form, if you have any investments that could be better in cash, this is a great time to sit on cash, because tomorrow you could be finding great bargains in the stock market. You might be able to find the same mutual fund for a much lower NAV. You might be able to find good property deals. For all of this, it's good to have cash today versus having it 2 years later. So for today's cash, I would sell all my profitable investments, keep them available. Out of this, some of it should be untouched in the form of a emergency fund. And tomorrow, if something happens to you or your family, this is what will come and help you. Now, why is this important? Here, I don't want to extrapolate the idea that, emergency fund is a, major part of your investment planning, but it's like one of the foundation steps. If you have your first emergency fund taken care of, then you start planning for a house, then you start planning for other investments, tax savings. For example, I'd rather pay tax to the government, say 10% tax to the government, then put money into an ELSS and get it locked for 5 years. And tomorrow, next month, if I have a contingency, the government or that ELSS is not going to come and cover me. I need to cover my expenditure. And hence, it's important to have this fund available first before you plan your investments. We'll be doing a lot of content about how to build a portfolio of assets and different elements of investments. But before that, as a foundation course, I want this to be implemented. Take it as a challenge. Go home and do your math. Sit here with your spouse and decide how much money you need if there's a contingency. How much do you need to pay the rent? Your EMIs, it could include your car loan, your house loan, whatever loans that you might have. If you have short-term loans, try to close them as soon as possible, because we don't know how the economy can turn. For all that we know, if we have a vaccine for COVID in the next few months, things might turn great. Otherwise, a recessional economy could continue for a year, 2 years, 5 years. There is absolutely no quantifiable answer anyone can give about that. I didn't want to make a huge video about emergency funds and the importance, because it's just a core concept that we all need to get a understanding about before we get into our investment journey. Wallet-wise, we'll be floating a lot of content about investments, portfolio management, debt planning, retirement planning, tax planning, and credit cards, which is one of our favorite topics. But the foundation for this is to see that you're prepared for contingencies, and that's the core idea of this video. I hope you like this. If not, leave your feedback. I'd love to hear what you think about this video. If you like the video, share it with your friends, subscribe to the channel, like the video, and I'll see you soon again. Surya from WalletWise. Thank you. Have a good day. Bye-bye.